Have you ever wondered why some people seem almost impossible to break? Life hits them with rejection, betrayal, failure, financial loss, heartbreak, criticism, and yet they remain calm. They don't collapse. They don't panic. They don't quit. Meanwhile, most people lose control over their lives because they lose control over something far more important, their own minds. Here's the terrifying truth. If you cannot control your thoughts, someone else will. Social media will. Advertisers will. Negative people will. Your emotions will. And before you realize it, years of your life will disappear while you wonder why you never became the person you were meant to be. But what if I told you that nearly 2,000 years ago, Stoic philosophers discovered a system so powerful that it transformed emperors, slaves, generals, and ordinary men into some of history's most disciplined human beings? Stay with me until the end, because the final Stoic principle may completely change the way you see yourself forever. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth. He possessed wealth, status, armies, and authority beyond imagination. Yet despite having everything, he faced endless suffering. Wars threatened Rome, plagues devastated the population, trusted allies betrayed him, members of his own family disappointed him. Every single day brought chaos, uncertainty, and pain. Most people assume power creates peace, but Marcus discovered something profound. No amount of external success can give you inner peace if your mind remains undisciplined. Every morning before facing the empire, Marcus reminded himself that he would encounter difficult people, selfish people, arrogant people, dishonest people, and people driven by ignorance. He expected hardship instead of resenting it. Because of this mindset, life could not surprise him. And this is where modern people suffer most. We expect life to be easy. We expect people to be fair. We expect constant happiness. Then reality arrives and we break. Stoicism teaches the opposite. Expect struggle. Expect discomfort. Expect setbacks. Not because life is cruel, but because reality becomes easier to handle when you stop fighting against what already exists. The moment you stop asking why this is happening to me and start asking what this situation is trying to teach me, your entire life begins to change. But this leads us to the first discipline most people never master. The first Stoic lesson is simple but brutally difficult. You are not your thoughts. Read that again. You are not your thoughts. Most people spend their entire lives imprisoned by voices inside their heads. A thought appears, I'm not good enough. Another thought appears, I'll probably fail. Another thought appears, people don't respect me. And without questioning these thoughts, people immediately believe them. Epictetus, who was born a slave and later became one of history's greatest Stoic teachers, said that people are disturbed not by events, but by their judgments about events. Think about that. Two people lose their jobs. One person sees disaster. The other sees opportunity. Same event, different interpretation, different future. The disciplined mind understands that thoughts are merely suggestions, not commands. You do not have to obey every thought that enters your mind. Imagine standing beside a busy highway watching cars pass. You don't chase every car. You simply observe. Stoicism teaches you to observe thoughts the same way. Anger appears. Observe it. Fear appears. Observe it. Doubt appears. Observe it. You are the observer, not the emotion itself. Consider a real-life example. A businessman spent 20 years building his company. Suddenly, economic conditions changed and the company collapsed. Everything disappeared. Employees left. Friends vanished. Critics emerged from nowhere. For months, he spiraled into depression. Every morning, his mind repeated the same story. You're a failure. You're finished. Your life is over. Then during therapy, he was asked a simple question. Is this a fact or is it a story? That question changed everything. Slowly, he realized he had not lost his value. He had simply lost a business. The event and his identity were not the same thing. Within 3 years, he built another company, stronger than the first. The external circumstances had not destroyed him. His interpretation almost had. How many stories are you telling yourself right now that are silently controlling your future? Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Modern psychology agrees. Studies repeatedly show that most fears people experience never actually happen. Yet millions remain trapped in anxiety because they rehearse disaster every day. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with rocks everywhere you go. Eventually, you forget you're carrying it because the weight becomes normal. Negative thinking works exactly the same way. Most people don't realize how exhausted they are because they've carried fear, resentment, regret, and self-doubt for so long. Stoicism invites you to put down the unnecessary weight. Not tomorrow, not next year, today. Now here's where self-discipline becomes truly powerful. Discipline is not forcing yourself to do hard things occasionally. Discipline is teaching yourself not to obey temporary emotions. This distinction changes everything. Most people wake up and ask themselves a dangerous question. What do I feel like doing today? The disciplined person asks a completely different question. What must be done regardless of how I feel? Feelings are temporary. Principles endure. Motivation disappears. Discipline remains. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that human beings were made for action. Just as bees make honey and birds fly, human beings are designed to contribute, create, build, serve, and grow. Yet modern life constantly encourages comfort over growth. Stay comfortable. Avoid difficulty. Escape discomfort. Seek endless entertainment. But comfort is seductive because it asks for nothing while taking everything. Think about your own life. How many dreams have been delayed because you were waiting to feel ready? How many goals remain unfinished because motivation disappeared? The Stoics understood a timeless truth. Action creates motivation far more often than motivation creates action. You do not become disciplined and then act. You act, and through repeated action, discipline emerges. Every great athlete understands this. They train when tired. They train when uninspired. They train when conditions are imperfect. Because excellence belongs to those who master consistency, not emotion. A young woman once decided she wanted to transform her life. She had spent years trapped in unhealthy habits, emotional eating, endless scrolling, and self-criticism. She constantly promised herself that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow never came. Finally, she adopted a Stoic principle. She stopped focusing on massive transformation and instead focused on daily victories. One healthy meal, one workout, one difficult conversation, 1 hour without distractions. Tiny victories accumulated. Months later, friends barely recognized her. Not because she changed overnight, but because she changed daily. This is the hidden secret of self-discipline. Your future is created by what you repeatedly do, not occasionally intend. But there is another enemy, far more dangerous than laziness. It destroys relationships, careers, and personal growth every single day. It is emotional reactivity. Someone insults you, you explode. Someone criticizes you, you shut down. Someone ignores you, you become anxious. Someone succeeds, you become jealous. In other words, your emotional buttons are controlled by everyone except you. And if other people control your emotions, they control your life. Epictetus taught that true freedom begins when you stop trying to control what is outside your control. This idea sounds simple until life tests you. Someone betrays you. You cannot control their actions. Someone leaves you. You cannot control their decision. People misunderstand you. You cannot control their opinions. But you can always control your response. This is where your power lives. Between stimulus and response exists a space. Within that space lies freedom. Most people never discover this space because they react automatically. Stoicism trains you to pause, to breathe, to observe, to choose. Imagine receiving a harsh message from someone you care about. Instantly, your emotions surge. Anger rises. Defensiveness appears. The undisciplined person reacts immediately and often regrets it later. The Stoic waits, hours if necessary, sometimes days. Why? Because emotions are temporary visitors, not permanent advisors. Time creates clarity, and clarity protects your future. Many viewers listening right now are carrying invisible wounds, betrayal, rejection, abandonment, loneliness. Perhaps someone you trusted deeply walked away. Perhaps you gave everything to people who gave nothing in return. Stoicism does not ask you to suppress pain. It asks you to transform it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle becomes the way. The very thing standing in your path can become the path itself. Pain can create wisdom. Rejection can create independence. Loneliness can create self-discovery. Betrayal can teach discernment. Your suffering does not have to define you. It can refine you, and yet there remains one final discipline that separates extraordinary individuals from ordinary ones. It is the discipline that allowed Stoic philosophers to remain calm in chaos, fearless in uncertainty, and unshakable in adversity. Most people never discover it. But once you understand it, you may never see life the same way again. Most people spend their lives fighting battles that do not exist. They argue with the past. They fear the future. They replay conversations that ended years ago. They imagine disasters that never happen. And while their bodies exist in the present moment, their minds live everywhere except where life is actually unfolding. This is why so many people feel exhausted even when they have done nothing physically demanding. Their minds are constantly at war. The Stoics understood something that modern neuroscience is only now confirming. Attention is your most valuable resource. Whatever controls your attention controls your life. If your attention is scattered, your life becomes scattered. If your attention is disciplined, your life becomes powerful. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to confine himself to the present, not because the future does not matter, but because the present is the only place where action is possible. You cannot act yesterday. You cannot act tomorrow. You can only act now. Yet modern society profits from keeping people distracted. Endless notifications, endless entertainment, endless outrage, endless comparison. Every distraction steals a small piece of your life. A few minutes here, a few hours there. Eventually, years disappear. One day, people wake up and wonder where their lives went. The answer is simple. Their attention was stolen. Imagine two men beginning life with the same intelligence, the same opportunities, and the same dreams. One learns to focus deeply. He reads instead of endlessly scrolling. He exercises when others procrastinate. He protects his attention as if it were gold. The second man follows every impulse. He seeks constant stimulation. He avoids discomfort. 10 years later, their lives look completely different. Not because of talent, not because of luck, but because of daily attention management. Self-discipline is ultimately the discipline of attention. Seneca warned that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. If you truly understood that your life is finite, you would become far more selective about what deserves your energy. Think about how often people destroy their peace because of strangers on the internet. Think about how many sleepless nights are caused by worrying about opinions from people whose approval will never truly matter. Stoicism invites you to ask a life-changing question. Will this matter 1 year from now? 5 years from now? At the end of my life? Most problems immediately shrink under the weight of that perspective. A powerful example comes from an emergency room physician who spent decades watching people face death. He noticed something extraordinary. Very few people regretted not spending more time online. Very few regretted not making more arguments. Instead, they regretted wasted potential. They regretted not expressing love. They regretted abandoning dreams because of fear. They regretted living according to other people's expectations. Regret is one of the most painful emotions a human being can experience because, unlike failure, regret cannot always be corrected. Stoicism teaches us to live in such a way that when our final day arrives, we can honestly say we used our time well. This leads to one of the hardest truths about self-discipline. You must become willing to disappoint people. That sentence alone may change someone's life. Many people remain trapped because they fear rejection. They say yes when they want to say no. They sacrifice their goals to satisfy others. They tolerate disrespect because they fear loneliness. But every unnecessary yes is often a hidden no to your own future. The disciplined individual understands that self-respect sometimes requires disappointing others. Epictetus taught that if you seek external approval, you hand your freedom away. Think about how much suffering comes from this single habit. People stay in toxic relationships because they fear being alone. Employees remain in jobs they hate because they fear criticism. Creators never publish their work because they fear judgment. Entire lives remain unlived because of imagined opinions. Yet history repeatedly shows that every extraordinary individual was criticized. Every innovator was doubted. Every leader was misunderstood. If criticism is unavoidable, then allowing criticism to control your life becomes irrational. Consider the story of a young entrepreneur who dreamed of starting his own business. For years he delayed because friends constantly discouraged him. They told him he was unrealistic. They warned him not to risk stability. They laughed at his ambitions. Eventually, he realized something important. The people criticizing him would not suffer the consequences of his inaction. He would, so he started anyway. The early years were brutal. There were failures, sleepless nights, and uncertainty. But within several years, his life transformed. Looking back, he realized that the greatest obstacle had never been money, competition, or circumstances. It had been his fear of disapproval. Stoicism teaches a radical form of responsibility. Everything begins with you. This does not mean blaming yourself for everything that happens. It means recognizing your power within every circumstance. Victims ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Stoics ask, "What can I do now?" Victims wait for rescue. Stoics create solutions. Victims surrender their agency. Stoics strengthen it. Personal responsibility is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. But it is also liberating because it restores power. Modern psychology calls this an internal locus of control. People who believe they can influence their lives tend to experience greater resilience, achievement, and emotional stability. Stoics understood this thousands of years earlier. Your happiness cannot depend entirely upon circumstances because circumstances constantly change. Wealth can disappear. Relationships can end. Health can decline. Status can vanish. If your identity depends entirely on external conditions, your peace will always remain fragile. Marcus Aurelius lost children. He endured betrayal. He governed during plague and war. Yet he repeatedly returned to a simple principle. You always possess the ability to choose your attitude. This is not motivational fantasy. It is psychological strength. You may not choose your circumstances, but you always influence your response. And your response shapes your future. There's another dimension of self-discipline that many people overlook. The discipline of solitude. Modern culture often portrays being alone as something negative. People fear silence because silence forces confrontation with themselves. They surround themselves with noise, entertainment, and constant activity because stillness reveals uncomfortable truths. But Stoic philosophers deliberately sought solitude, not to escape life, but to understand themselves. When you are alone without distraction, who are you? What do you truly value? What fears are silently controlling you? What dreams have you abandoned? These questions are uncomfortable precisely because they matter. Many people spend decades avoiding themselves. Then one day, life forces stillness through loss, illness, retirement, or crisis. Suddenly they discover they barely know who they are. A man nearing retirement once confessed that he had spent 40 years building a successful career while neglecting nearly every other aspect of life. His identity depended entirely on work. When retirement arrived, he felt empty. He realized he had accumulated achievements but neglected self-knowledge. Stoicism reminds us that external success without internal development creates imbalance. A disciplined life requires both achievement and reflection. Seneca recommended regular self-examination. At the end of each day, he reviewed his actions. What did I do well? Where did I fail? How can I improve tomorrow? Imagine how transformative this practice could become if consistently applied. Most people repeat the same mistakes because they never pause long enough to examine them. Reflection transforms experience into wisdom. Another essential Stoic practice involves negative visualization. At first, this concept sounds pessimistic, but it is profoundly liberating. The Stoics periodically imagined losing things they loved, not to create fear, but to cultivate gratitude and resilience. Imagine losing your health. Imagine losing your home. Imagine losing someone you deeply love. Suddenly, ordinary moments become precious. Gratitude intensifies. Complaints diminish. Petty frustrations lose significance. Modern people often postpone appreciation. They assume opportunities, relationships, and time will always remain available. But life offers no such guarantee. Self-discipline becomes easier when gratitude is present, because gratitude reveals the value of what is already within reach. People protect what they appreciate. They nurture what they value. Perhaps one of the greatest modern epidemics is comparison. Social media has created unprecedented opportunities for comparison. Every day, people consume carefully edited versions of other people's lives and conclude they are falling behind. They compare their private struggles to someone else's public highlight reel. The result is anxiety, envy, inadequacy, and despair. Marcus Aurelius warned against becoming distracted by the lives of others. Your race is your own. Someone else's timeline is irrelevant to your destiny. Comparison steals joy because it shifts focus away from growth and toward competition. The disciplined individual competes primarily with the person they were yesterday. Progress becomes internal rather than external. Imagine two women beginning fitness journeys. One constantly compares herself to influencers online. She becomes discouraged because progress appears slow. Eventually, she quits. The second woman measures success differently. She compares herself only to her previous self. Small improvements become victories. Momentum grows. Years later, she achieves extraordinary transformation. The difference was not genetics. It was perspective. As you listen right now, ask yourself a difficult question. Whose life are you trying to live? Your own or someone else's? Because many people unconsciously pursue goals they never truly chose. They seek careers, possessions, and lifestyles primarily because society rewards them. Yet external achievement without internal alignment often produces emptiness. Stoicism repeatedly returns us to authenticity. Know yourself. Govern yourself. Master yourself. Because if you fail to govern yourself, the world will gladly do it for you. And there is one final Stoic truth about discipline that may be the most important lesson of all. It concerns mortality itself. Most people avoid thinking about death. The Stoics did the opposite. They contemplated death regularly, not morbidly but intentionally, because remembering death clarifies life. When you remember that your time is limited, excuses lose power. Petty arguments lose importance. Procrastination becomes absurd. The illusion of endless tomorrows disappears. Suddenly the question is no longer how long you will live, but how deeply you will live. And once you truly understand this principle, everything changes forever. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and being told with absolute certainty that you have only 1 year left to live. Not 10 years, not 20, just one. How differently would you live? Would you still spend hours arguing with strangers online? Would you continue delaying your dreams? Would you keep tolerating people who constantly disrespect you? Would you continue saying someday while your life quietly slips away? Most people already know the answers to these questions. The problem is not a lack of knowledge. The problem is a lack of urgency. The Stoics understood something most people never truly accept. Every sunrise is a gift, but it is also a subtraction. One less day remains. One less opportunity exists. One less chance to become who you were meant to become. Marcus Aurelius wrote as though he constantly remembered this truth. He reminded himself that he could leave life at any moment. Therefore, every action, every word, and every decision mattered. This awareness did not make the Stoics fearful. It made them alive. It gave them intensity. It gave them clarity. It gave them discipline. Because when you stop assuming that time is unlimited, you stop wasting it. Suddenly, the excuses that once seemed reasonable begin to sound ridiculous. I will start next month. I will fix my health later. I will pursue my dream when conditions are perfect. I will tell people I love them eventually. Stoicism destroys the fantasy of perfect timing because perfect timing does not exist. There is only now. Think about how many extraordinary lives have remained hidden because people waited too long. The book never written, the business never started, the relationship never repaired, the apology never given, the talent never developed. Human history is filled not only with failed attempts, but with abandoned possibilities. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is not failure. The greatest tragedy is reaching the end of life filled with potential that was never expressed. A man in his 60s once shared a painful realization. Throughout his younger years, he dreamed of becoming a musician. Music was not merely a hobby. It was part of his identity. Yet he repeatedly postponed it because life always seemed too busy. Career responsibilities increased. Family obligations expanded. Financial pressures appeared. Decades passed. One evening, while cleaning his attic, he discovered the guitar he had not touched in over 30 years. As he held it, he broke down in tears, not because he had failed, but because he had abandoned himself. That moment reveals a truth many people avoid. Every time you consistently ignore your deepest values, a small part of you begins to disappear. Self-discipline is not punishment. Self-discipline is self-respect in action. It is the daily decision to honor your future self. Every healthy meal says I matter. Every workout says I matter. Every difficult conversation says I matter. Every boundary says I matter. Every hour spent learning, growing, creating, and improving says I matter. Discipline is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming fully yourself. Unfortunately, modern culture often misunderstands discipline. Many people imagine discipline as harshness, deprivation, and relentless self-criticism. The Stoics viewed it differently. True discipline is an expression of wisdom. It recognizes that short-term discomfort often creates long-term freedom. Consider physical exercise. The workout itself may be uncomfortable, but the result is strength, health, confidence, and energy. Consider financial discipline. Delaying immediate gratification may feel difficult, but it creates future security and independence. Consider emotional discipline. Choosing not to react impulsively may feel uncomfortable in the moment, but it protects relationships, reputation, and inner peace. Every meaningful achievement requires the willingness to endure temporary discomfort for permanent growth. Yet most people remain trapped because they seek immediate relief rather than lasting fulfillment. They avoid difficult conversations and create resentment. They avoid exercise and lose health. They avoid responsibility and lose confidence. They avoid risk and lose possibility. Avoidance provides temporary comfort, but permanent limitation. Epictetus taught that if you wish to improve, be content to appear foolish and stupid in external matters. In modern language, this means you must become comfortable being uncomfortable. You must become willing to look inexperienced while learning. You must become willing to fail publicly while growing. You must become willing to disappoint expectations while pursuing authenticity. Every master was once a beginner. Every confident person was once uncertain. Every disciplined individual was once undisciplined. Transformation is not an event. It is a process. Perhaps you are listening right now while struggling silently. Maybe you feel lost. Maybe your habits have deteriorated. Maybe anxiety controls your decisions. Maybe heartbreak has weakened your confidence. Maybe you have failed repeatedly and begun to question yourself. If so, understand this. The Stoics never promised an easy life. They promised something far more valuable. They promised that no matter what happens externally, you can develop an inner fortress that cannot easily be destroyed. This inner fortress is built one decision at a time. It is built every time you choose courage over comfort, every time you choose discipline over impulse, every time you choose responsibility over excuses, every time you choose growth over fear. These decisions may appear insignificant in isolation, but over months and years, they completely reshape identity. Consider the story of a man who battled severe adversity after losing nearly everything during an economic collapse. He lost his home. He lost his savings. His marriage ended. Depression consumed him. For months, he believed his life was finished. Then one morning he encountered a quote from Marcus Aurelius that read, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." At first he rejected it. The pain felt overwhelming. But eventually he asked himself a simple question. What remains within my control today? The answer was small. He could wake up early. He could exercise. He could read. He could apply for jobs. He could improve his mindset. He could choose his attitude. Those tiny actions slowly changed everything. Weeks became months. Months became years. His external life gradually recovered, but more importantly, he discovered that his true strength had never disappeared. It had simply been buried beneath despair. Many viewers need to hear this. Your circumstances may have damaged your confidence, but they have not defined your potential. You are stronger than your current situation. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. Those words are profoundly important today because modern society often encourages endless consumption of information without corresponding action. People watch motivational videos. They read books. They save quotes. They plan endlessly. Yet transformation occurs only when knowledge becomes behavior. You do not need another perfect plan. You need a beginning. You do not need complete certainty. You need movement. You do not need to feel ready. You need action. Start with one habit. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. Exercise for 20 minutes. Read 10 pages. Journal every evening. Eliminate one destructive behavior. Protect 1 hour of focused work each day. Small disciplines create extraordinary lives. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. 2 possible futures exist. In the first future, nothing changes. The same excuses remain. The same fears dominate. The same habits persist. Another year disappears. Regret deepens. In the second future, you begin today. Imperfectly, slowly, consistently, you stumble. You fail, you restart, but you continue. 12 months later, you hardly recognize yourself. Greater confidence, greater peace, greater strength, greater self-respect. Both futures are possible. The decision belongs entirely to you. The Stoics believed that character is destiny. Not because destiny is fixed, but because your repeated choices eventually become your life. Every thought matters. Every action matters. Every day matters. And the beautiful truth is this. No matter how many mistakes you have made, no matter how much time you believe you have wasted, no matter how far you have drifted from the person you wish to become, you can begin again today. Right now. In this moment, because self-discipline is not about perfection. It is about returning to your values, returning to your purpose, returning to yourself. So as you leave this video, remember these timeless Stoic truths. Control your mind or your mind will control you. Master your emotions or your emotions will master you. Guard your attention because your attention creates your life. Respect your time because your time is finite. And above all, never underestimate the power of small, disciplined actions repeated consistently. Years from now, you may look back on this moment as the day everything changed. If this message resonated with you, write, "I choose discipline" in the comments below. It is more than a phrase. It is a commitment to yourself. And if you want more powerful Stoic wisdom to strengthen your mind, build resilience, and transform your life, make sure to subscribe and join this growing community. Because in a world filled with distraction, weakness, and noise, disciplined minds will always rise. And remember, the greatest victory you will ever achieve is not over other people. It is over yourself.